They say children see the world differently, with eyes unclouded by judgment, with hearts untouched by pride. And sometimes, in their innocence, they teach us lessons we've long forgotten. For one little girl, a single hug would bring an entire city to a standstill. And for her father, that moment would melt every wall he had built around his heart. It was a chilly autumn morning in the heart of the city. Cars honked impatiently, people rushed past in business suits, and the air was filled with the sharp smell of roasted coffee drifting from nearby cafes. Among the rushing crowd was Daniel Miller, a man in his mid-30s, dressed in a perfectly pressed navy suit. He was a rising executive at one of the city's biggest firms, successful, respected, and always in a hurry. But Daniel was also a single father. Walking beside him, clutching his hand, was Lily, his 7-year-old daughter. She wore a light pink cardigan, her blonde hair neatly tied in braids. In her other hand she carried her favorite teddy bear, its fur a little worn from years of love. Daniel adored Lily, but his life was consumed by deadlines, phone calls, and meetings. Every morning he walked her to school on his way to the office. Today was no different, at least that's what he thought. As they hurried down Main Street, Daniel kept his eyes fixed on his phone, scrolling through urgent emails. Lily, however, looked everywhere else. That's when she saw him. Sitting against the cold brick wall of a closed bookstore was a homeless man. His hair was gray and unkempt, his beard long and scruffy. His coat was torn at the seams, his shoes barely held together with tape. Beside him lay a piece of cardboard with shaky handwriting. "Hungry? Anything helps. God bless." Most people walked past without even glancing. Some turned their heads away, pretending he wasn't there. A few tossed coins into the paper cup beside him without stopping. But Lily stopped. She tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice filled with concern. "Why is that man sitting on the ground? He looks so cold." Daniel barely glanced up. "Come on, Lily. We're late. Don't stare." But Lily didn't move. Her small blue eyes locked on the man, who sat shivering, staring down at his hands. Before Daniel could react, Lily let go of his hand. She walked straight toward the homeless man. Her little shoes tapped softly against the pavement as strangers turned to look. The man lifted his head in surprise. His eyes were weary, almost lifeless, as though the world had beaten every ounce of hope out of him. And then, to everyone's astonishment, Lily dropped to her knees and wrapped her tiny arms around him. The crowd froze. Conversation stopped. Even the traffic noise seemed to dim for a moment. The homeless man's eyes widened. His lips trembled. No one had touched him in years. People avoided him, recoiled from him, pretended he didn't exist. But here was a little girl, holding him as if he were family. Slowly his arms lifted. With hesitation, as if afraid she might pull away, he hugged her back. His entire body shook as silent tears streamed down his cheeks. Daniel stood frozen on the sidewalk, his phone slipping from his hand. His first instinct was panic. Strangers were watching, his daughter was hugging a dirty man on the street, and he feared judgment. But then he saw the man's face. The raw, broken gratitude. The way his shoulders trembled. The way Lily's innocent smile softened his pain. And suddenly Daniel felt his chest tighten. For years he had walked past people like this, never stopping, never caring. He had told himself he was too busy, that it wasn't his problem. But now, watching his little girl do what he never had the courage to do, he felt something inside him break. Daniel slowly approached. The man quickly tried to wipe his tears, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, sir," the homeless man stammered. "She just came up to me. I didn't mean." But Daniel shook his head, his voice catching in his throat. "No. Don't apologize." Lily looked up at her father. "Daddy, can we help him? Please?" For a long moment, Daniel couldn't speak. Then he crouched down beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What's your name, sir?" he asked quietly. The man hesitated. "Michael," he said. "Michael Turner." Daniel nodded. "Well, Michael, would you like to join us for breakfast?" Michael's eyes widened. For a second he thought it was a cruel joke. But when he looked at Daniel he saw sincerity, and when he looked at Lily he saw pure, unconditional kindness. They walked together to a nearby cafe. People stared as the suited businessman, his daughter, and the ragged homeless man sat down at a table. But Daniel no longer cared. For the first time in years he felt human. Michael ate slowly, almost reverently, as though afraid the food might disappear if he finished too quickly. Lily chatted happily between bites of her pancakes, asking him about his favorite color, his favorite book, and if he had ever had a teddy bear like hers. Daniel listened quietly, ashamed of how easily his daughter treated Michael with dignity, something he had forgotten how to give. When breakfast ended, Daniel insisted on paying for a hotel room so Michael could rest and clean up. He even gave him a few sets of his own clothes. Over the following weeks, Daniel and Lily visited Michael often. They learned his story. Once he had been a construction worker, but after an accident and mounting medical bills, he lost his job, his home, and eventually his family. "I stopped believing people cared," Michael admitted one day, his voice trembling. "Until your little girl hugged me. That hug, it reminded me I was still a person." Daniel swallowed hard. His daughter's simple act had given this man something more powerful than food or shelter. It had given him hope. Months passed. With Daniel's support, Michael entered a rehabilitation program, found steady work, and eventually rented his own small apartment. On the day he signed the lease, he hugged Daniel tightly. "I owe this to Lily," he said, tears in his eyes. "She didn't just hug me that day. She saved me." Daniel looked at his daughter, who was skipping happily down the hall, her teddy bear bouncing in her arms. He realized she had saved him too, saved him from a life of indifference, from a heart hardened by pride. Sometimes the smallest hands carry the greatest lessons. A little girl's hug did what money, power, and pride never could. It reminded a father, and an entire city, that humanity begins with compassion. And as Daniel tucked Lily into bed that night, she looked up and whispered, "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to hug the whole world." Daniel kissed her forehead, his heart full. "You already have, sweetheart. You already have." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Humanity Corner for more powerful stories of kindness, hope, and second chances.